The Chronicles of Dreythal. Character Profile. Yarvick, the Shadow Spear. Character Dossier. Tall and wiry, Yarvick strikes a haunting silhouette, an eerie union of man and pale wraith. Standing at 6 feet 4 inches and weighing 163 pounds, his frame is skeletal and slim to the point of appearing starved. Pallid skin stretches taut over angular bones, every motion unsettling and soundless, like a memory slipping through fog. The 9th son of a paranoid nobleman from the once-feared kingdom of Dreythal, a land steeped in grim traditions and bound by ancient, brutal laws. Dreythal was once a high citadel of dragon-hunting culture, where strength of arms and ancestral bloodlines determined power and survival. Its noble houses, fortified keeps, and ritualistic order of succession bred generations of warriors trained in silence and raised to despise weakness. But paranoia, corruption, and old magic have gnawed at the realm's soul, leaving it fractured and haunted, its former glory now remembered only in blood and ruin. Yarvick was born into a lineage steeped in shadow and fire, set to stretch back through eras of dragon slayers, warriors who carved their legacies into the flesh of scaled gods. His father, Lord Caelric of House Varos, ruled not with wisdom, but with fear. Haunted by voices both real and imagined, Yarvick's earliest memories were forged in the crucible of confinement, discipline, and pain. Confined to stone chambers, subjected to long, silent hours under the gaze of paranoid watchers, and beaten under the pretense of making him strong. Caelric believed madness was a tool of power, and passed it to his children like inheritance. He viewed each of his sons as a threat, a dagger in waiting. Yarvick, though the youngest, bore the worst of it, his spirit honed in isolation, his body cast into darkness. Beatings were frequent, sleep a luxury, and food a bargaining chip. Locked away for weeks in cellars with only whispers for company, but he learned to hear silence, to anticipate betrayal from shadows. Each scar became a lesson, each starvation a rite of passage. Yet even now, the memories press in like a blade against the ribs, haunting, heavy, unshakable. Yarvick wonders at times if the darkness that shaped him has settled too deeply, if the cruelty etched into his youth has become indistinguishable from his nature. He fears, in the quiet moments between battles, that he walks the same path as Caelric, that what his father forged in torment still guides his hand in shadow. Over years, this torment did not break him, but tempered him into something harder than hate. An instrument of quiet resolve, shaped not by nurture, but by necessity. Caelric's end came not by court or army, but in silence. A wandering warrior whose name was never known entered the keep and left Caelric's corpse cooling in its own madness. That warrior would later cross blades with Yarvick beneath the vaulted stone of a forgotten chapel, the air thick with ancestral echoes. From that duel, Yarvick did not simply survive. He rose, bloodied and gasping, with the cursed spear in hand, and the final shreds of innocence burned away. The clash had been a savage ballet of instinct and fury, each strike echoing not only steel, but buried grief and ancestral rage. Yarvick fought with a desperate precision, born of torment, wielding pain as if it were a second blade. The nameless warrior moved like a specter, but Yarvick, in that moment, became something ancient, less man, more vengeance given form. It was not just a duel, but a crucible, and when the final blow landed and the spear hissed into his grip, he knew something inside him had been seared away forever, replaced by silence, purpose, and a darkness that had finally found its name. It was a moment some now call the Second Silence, an echo of the old myth where a soul is quieted by Shadow's blessing. Chroniclers debate whether Yarvick's ascension was foretold in the Drake-marked scrolls, ancient Dreythal manuscripts, inked in blood and ash, said to have been penned by the last surviving seers of the Arkal Dominion. These scrolls, fragmented and scattered across the continent, are revered by scholars and feared by kings. They foretell blood-soaked omens, lost relics, and the return of forgotten powers. While some dismiss them as myth, others scour the ruins of the old world for their hidden texts, hoping to unlock truths buried in fire and prophecy. Prophecies that speak of a blood heir reclaiming a cursed relic during a lunar reckoning. Whether myth or fate, that moment sealed his inheritance and bound him not only to the spear, but to a destiny lost to time and fire. The legacy of House Varos passed to him not through coronation, but through carnage. Lord Kelric, consumed by his own delusions, believed each of his 9 sons to be cursed usurpers and potential assassins. He kept them isolated in different wings of the fortress, forbidding them to speak or even know each other. Yet whispers persist that it was not simply madness that took root in Kelric's mind, but the curse of Nocturnis Talon itself. Some believe the spear drove him mad, for Kelric had not earned it through valor or rightful duel. Instead, as the tale goes, he stole the weapon like a coward in his youth, retrieving it from the corpse-strewn battlefield where its former wielder had perished in mutual combat with a rival. Both warriors had died from their wounds, and Kelric, a squire at the time, claimed the prize in secret, bathed it in their blood, and hid the truth for decades. When he was finally killed by a wandering warrior whose name has been lost to time, the power of House Varos shattered. In the chaos that followed, Yarvick and his brothers were scattered to the winds, each sent away to different corners of the world. Some in exile to the cursed black marshes of Varn Hollow, others hidden within the shifting markets of the desert city Kareth Zan under false names. A few were traded as hostages to the ruling families of the Freehold Isles, pawns in desperate political bargains made by crumbling factions within House Varos. Rumors even whisper that at least one brother was taken by the secretive archivists of the Sable Choir, an esoteric order known for harvesting knowledge and blood with equal precision. One brother vanished into the jungles of the southern wilds and was rumored to have become a beast tamer, commanding serpents and panthers with whispered words. Another was taken by sea raiders during a trade convoy and never heard from again, though sailors sometimes tell tales of a one-eyed slave who walks the decks of a cursed ghost ship. A third brother disappeared into the eastern sands and was later seen among a heretical priesthood, delivering frenzied sermons about the return of an ancient dragon god. One was imprisoned in the ice fortress of Kalvegar in the deep north after assassinating a duke, his name stricken from records, known only as the Crimson Hand. Another brother, drawn by visions, wandered into the mouth of Cinders, a volcanic chasm revered by dragon cults, and was never seen again. A sixth brother turned mercenary in the warring Riverlands, forging a bloodied reputation before vanishing during a failed coup. The seventh is said to have renounced his name entirely, living as a silent monk high in the cliffs of the Hollow Heights, where wind and prayer are the only voices. The eighth was rumored to have betrayed the crown and fled west, taking on the mantle of a masked assassin feared in 5 realms. Only Yarvick returned to Dreythal, not to reclaim it, but to walk its bones in silence, tracing the crumbling halls of his family's shattered keep, where echoes of past screams still whispered in the stone. He unearthed relics, once thought lost, his father's shattered crown, a preserved scroll sealed in dragon wax, and the ashes of the House Varos banner buried beneath rubble. In the ghost-infested catacombs, he confronted wraiths, some real, others memories too stubborn to die. Not all who remained had forgotten him. A few broken retainers, mad from solitude, called him heir of ash and begged for purpose. Yet Yarvick offered no words, only silence and steel, bearing the very weapon his father once wielded, in fear and fury. His musculature is sparse yet sharply defined, born not of vanity but of necessity, refined by decades of battle, exposure, and starvation in the bleakest reaches of the known world. In the frost-bitten ruins of the northern scar, he once survived a month alone, hunted by the bone wolves of the Windmarrow wastes, eating moss and marrow from his own shattered shield. In the scorched sands of Sarath Din, he endured days beneath a dying sun, pursued by cursed zealots, whose blades burned with branded scripture. Each trial carved muscle into his form, like a sculptor with a cruel hand, each step through fire and ash, forging a body conditioned not for display, but for survival. Every fiber of muscle clings like tensioned wire beneath his pallid skin, a lattice of resilience trained to outlast the world. But his forging began far earlier. In his youth, Yarvick was subject to unspeakable tortures at the hands of his paranoid father, who believed in purging weakness with fire and pain. Shackled in cold stone vaults, denied sleep, and broken with cruel rites meant to temper his mind, he was forged into something unfeeling. Those early scars cut deeper than blade or flame. They shaped him into cast iron, body and soul, unyielding, unbending, and quiet in his agony. This strength is deceptive, not built in courts or training halls, but shaped in the oubliettes of madness, in ambushes through frozen wastes as mows, and in curses survived alone. He is strength born of cruelty, endurance that does not triumph, but endures because it must. Deep-set, sunken eyes glow with a steady crimson hue, as if ancient embers smolder behind them, glowing almost like the gaze of a serpent or some primordial reptile, unblinking and cold with ancient purpose. Their gaze is piercing and unsettling, radiating a silent fury and unspoken knowledge. His face, gaunt and corpse-like, bears no beard, not by choice, but as if time itself forbade softness from settling there. Gaunt cheeks, hollow temples, and a jagged scar that runs from his bottom lip past his collarbone define his ritualistic appearance, a mark he earned in his youth during a brutal duel against the nameless wanderer who had slain his father. It was in that twilight-soaked clash that Yarvick, barely more than a specter of fury and grief, claimed Nocturnis Talon by right of blood, tearing the weapon from the fallen warrior's grasp and sealing his fate with a wound he still bears like a brand of inheritance, marked not just by violence, but perhaps destiny. At 47, Yarvick is not a relic of age, but a blade of experience, honed, scarred, and sharp. He is not worn, he is forged, like obsidian, beautiful in its fragility, devastating in its precision. A figure cloaked in dusk, bearing the sigil of a slain white dragon, bleeding red blood on the back of his torn snow-white cloak. His face is clean cut, as if fate never granted him the time to grow a beard, emphasizing the sharpness of his jaw and the severity of his expression. His deep crimson eyes, almost serpentine or draconic in their intensity, seem to pierce through shadow and soul alike. Pale, thick scars crisscross his body like a brutal map of survival, each one a testament to battles endured and horrors overcome, etched into his flesh as if by the hand of fate itself. Among them is a particularly deep slash across his ribs, the wound left by his own blood, his fourth brother, once a knight of the Hollow Order, whose devotion to the old codes had twisted into fanatical zeal. The duel was not born of rivalry, but of doctrine, a clash of what the bloodline should be, the torchbearer of forgotten honor versus the shadow-forged survivor. Under moonlight, among shattered pews and crumbling saints, they fought not just for supremacy, but for belief. Yarvick won, but the final blow cut deeper than flesh. In that moment, he saw not a foe, but a brother still whispering their childhood name for each other, eyes dimming with disbelief. The scar remains, not as a trophy, but a wound the soul has never fully healed. His fourth brother, once a knight of the Hollow Order, their duel had raged through the ruins of an old chapel, lit by moonlight and haunted by the ghosts of their past. When Yarvick emerged, he bore not only the scar, but the weight of fratricide, a burden he carries in silence. Over this weathered flesh, he wears armor that clings tightly to his form, resembling dull, dark gray scales. The plates seem fused to his very shape, as though forged not by mortal hands, but grown like a carapace around his suffering. Dried blood stains the seams and edges, baked into the grooves, as if the armor itself feeds on pain. There are whispers it is cursed, fitted to him not by smith, but by spell, and that it can never be removed without tearing skin from bone. A stark contrast to the blackened spear he wields, its head sharp, hooked, and deadly. Intricate feather-like patterns are etched along the length of the shaft, not merely as decoration, but as ancient sigils believed to bind the spirit of a long-dead beast within. The weapon radiates a cold malice, a latent hunger, as though the essence of the eagle it once mimicked still hungered for prey from beyond the grave. It is a weapon of such darkness that under the night sky it vanishes completely from sight, save for the eerie shimmer of its runes. This weapon, known as Nocturnis Talon, is said to be forged from the claw of an elder dragon, whose scales were black as onyx, and whose breath did not merely burn flesh, but scorched the soul. The dragon was slain under an azure blood moon, a rare celestial event said to herald the fall of titanic power, and its claw bathed in the void of a starless sky, where even constellations dared not bear witness. Only during a lunar eclipse does the spear's true form flicker into sight, its edge illuminated by a ghostly pulse. It speaks in a sharp, deep, and unintelligible tongue that claws at the sanity of all who hear it, thought by some to echo the forgotten language of the elder dragons, though none have survived long enough to confirm. The spear cannot be merely claimed. It must be taken in blood. Only by slaying its previous master and bathing it in fresh sacrifice can its new bearer earn its allegiance. Etched with runes of forgotten shadow, Nocturnis Talon shimmers with a deep, pulsing glow, as if each symbol were a window into some far-off inferno. The runes flicker like coals disturbed by a cold breath, bleeding faint trails of crimson that waver in patterns unreadable to the sane. Scholars have tried to decipher them, only to be driven to silence or madness. Some believe these etchings foretell a convergence of bloodlines and catastrophe, a reckoning still crawling toward the horizon, in faint crimson, almost like the embers of a dying fire, casting brief glimmers of ancient warnings into the darkness with every subtle movement. Where his boots fall, silence follows, and the earth remembers fear. His boots are crafted to resemble the talons of an eagle, forged in dark gray steel, with the remnants of sculpted wings arcing up the sides, now cracked and caked in dried blood. The wings, once symbols of nobility and freedom, appear torn and broken from countless battles, echoing the slow erosion of whatever nobility once lived in Yarvick himself. He sometimes wonders if the armor's design mocks him, if those shattered wings mirror a soul that once aspired to fly, but has since accepted only the burden of walking through blood. The grace is gone, and in its place, a grounded fury, giving the impression that even flight itself has fled from him. Each step lands with grim finality, the metallic talons scraping the earth, as though mourning something long lost. As he rounds over a tall, grassy hill, the horizon opens to reveal the jagged silhouettes of ruined ancient castles in the distance, skeletal remains of the Archal dominion, a once mighty empire of dragon-bound sorcerer kings long crumbled, their broken towers stabbing skyward like accusing fingers.